Livin' just to find emotion. Journey and the story of American rock. So when you think about Journey, then everything else just falls into place in terms of the title. Just a small town girl living in a lonely world. How about it for the author of this book, historian David Hamilton Golland? What's up, David?
Well, good afternoon, Mark, and good afternoon, San Francisco, the home of Journey.
Yeah, that's right. Journey did rise in the Bay Area. And we were talking before about the fact that, there are a lot of big Bay Area bands and even contemporaries of Journey that did well and are still doing okay. I mean, with the surviving members or whatever. I'm thinking of like bands like REO Speedwagon is the one that came to mind last hour. But the enduring success, the super group success that Journey had really outpaced all of that. And then I remembered, and then I'll stop and I want to hear what you have to say. But then I remembered that the lead singer of Journey, Steve Perry, left the band. They had to replace their lead singer. I mean, this is a signature voice of the band, and they still were filling arenas and super. So tell us, take us through this remarkable story that you've written on.
I mean, there's just so much to tell, Mark. But I think the major point of the fact that Steve Perry left, and that he left twice, and yet they're still filling arenas and stadiums, not just in the United States, all around the Pacific Rim, wherever they go, is just an incredible, remarkable story. But it hasn't always been that way. In fact, there was a time in the early 2000s when they were playing county fairs, and it wasn't quite the way it is now or the way it was during the heyday years with Steve.
Well, when they were playing county fairs, was that the beginning, or did they take a rise up and then dip down?
This was part of their dip down. When Steve Perry left the band for good officially in 1998, but it was after their reunion album, Trial by Fire, which came out in 1996. They initially replaced him with a fellow from Brooklyn, New York named Steve Augeri. And Steve Augeri not only sounds like Steve Perry in terms of his name, but he sort of had that look of Steve Perry, and he definitely had that voice. But the fans weren't having it. I mean, they could make a living out there on the road, and they did, and they kept going with about 3/5 of their classic era lineup. But it was hard going during those years.
Now, that's fascinating to me because you're saying they got a guy who looked and sounded like Steve Perry, and then somehow they still couldn't get traction with their audience. What changed? What happened? And first of all, why do you suppose that would be?
Oh, there he is on your screen. Yeah. I think the initial shock of losing Steve Perry and the fan base, but also we have to remember at that time, that super hit, Don't Stop Believin', was not the hit that it has since become again. It was a big hit in the early 1980s. It brought me into fandom with the band. It's the first song I ever heard played by Journey in the summer of 1982. I remember hearing it vividly that first time. But in the late 1990s, early 1980s, that song was the butt of jokes. I mean, I remember in 1998, when it was either 98 or 99, when Adam Sandler made fun of it in the movie The Wedding Singer by playing a violin version at his first wedding, the one where he gets stood up at the altar. And yet, that song has just had this remarkable return to prominence, from the movie Monster to the TV show Glee, to becoming an underdog anthem for all sorts of sports teams, to the final scene of The Sopranos, which is when it really came back into the mainstream big time.
Why did Steve Perry leave Journey?
So Steve Perry left Journey twice. The last time he was on a stage in a full Journey concert was February 1st, 1987. So that's 37 years ago already. And he left for his health and for his sanity. The band, during the years when it was on top of the world in the late 70s, early 80s, they would tour incessantly, night after night after night, 9 months out of the year. Then they'd go straight back into the studio, either where you are in the Bay Area or down in the Los Angeles area, for another 3 months to churn out the next album. And that's a really, really grueling pace. Now, it paid off. It made them incredibly successful, but that's a lot to maintain. And so when he walked away in 1987, he was doing it for himself, and he really needed to do it. It's probably one of the most mature decisions and that's not a very high bar. Most mature decisions a rock star could make. The second time he left in 1998, he needed hip replacement surgery. He wasn't sure that he was going to get the hip replacement surgery at that time, and the band made a fateful decision to move on without him, and they have been performing without him ever since. But I think what a lot of the fans and a lot of our listeners and viewers might be surprised to know is that he's still a co-owner of the company that controls the band, and he's still making money every time they go out there and perform those hits.
That's extraordinary. Yeah. So the situation they faced with trying to replace him, it not working out, even though they had clearly a talented performer. They go on a search of sorts, right? What take us through that? It's a pretty. I think it's a unique story. Maybe some other band did it, but I can't think of any other band that did it with the success that Journey did.
Oh, it truly is. It's an incredible story. So Steve Augeri had been caught lip syncing, and the band was behind him in this. That is to say, management and the technicians. They had been allowing him to lip sync on stage for some time. By the time he left in 2006, because he had really just burned his voice out again, night after night, singing those songs that Perry could sing when he was 29, 30, 31 years old. Now Steve Augeri's in his late 40s trying to do that. That's pretty hard. And so when he was kind of burned out, he left the band. They briefly had a fellow, also from Brooklyn, New York, as I recall, Jeff Scott Soto. And then they let Jeff Scott Soto go for basically looking like he was going to turn Journey. He was going to do for Journey what Sammy Hagar did for Van Halen. And I think the powers that be in the band at that time, mainly guitarist Neil Schon, were just like, no, that's not happening.
So what does that mean? Can you flesh that out for those of us who might not know what that parallel is?
Well, the Hagar parallel, right. So Van Halen came to prominence in out of Los Angeles with really two major rock stars, and they were Eddie Van Halen, the guitarist, and David Lee Roth, this flamboyant, over-the-top lead singer. Anyone can just go ahead and YouTube the video for Jump, for instance, or Hot for Teacher, and David Lee Roth's all over that. And he went off for a solo career, as Steve Perry did, right around the same time. And eventually Van Halen replaced him with Bay Area rock star Sammy Hagar. And Sammy kind of moved Van Halen in a somewhat different direction. He was not a clone of David Lee Roth by any stretch of the imagination, very different person. And so when Jeff Scott Soto became lead singer of Journey, he could sing all those Journey hits, but he also wanted to take it in a little bit of a different direction. And when he started saying that sort of thing to the press, Neil Schon, who believed very strongly that Journey's success lies in its catalog, in its hits that Steve Perry originated, he and his bandmates and management decided that that Jeff Scott Soto would have to go. This incidentally happened about 3 weeks before The Sopranos aired its final episode. So when that episode came on, and Don't Stop Believin', downloads of Don't Stop Believin' increased sixfold just overnight, literally overnight. I mean, the day before that show aired, there were about 1,000 downloads on iTunes of that song, and the very next day there were more than 6,000 iTunes downloads just of that song, and they had no lead singer. And so Neil Schon was looking on YouTube, and he was just going through tribute band lead singer and other tribute band lead singer and cover singers and anyone he could possibly find. And then he saw this grainy video of this seemingly kid who was actually in his 30s already in the Philippines, Arnel Pineda. And Arnel was in a cover band at the time called The Zoo, playing in places like Hard Rock Manila, and doing covers of all sorts of songs. I mean, he's a chameleon, Arnel. He doesn't just do Steve Perry's voice. When you ask him to sing anything by Pete Cetera of Chicago, and he'll belt that out. You mentioned REO Speedwagon. He can do REO Speedwagon, Mark, better than Kevin Cronin these days, perhaps. But they found him, and they got the papers in order, and they brought him in from the Philippines, and it has been an incredible resurgence for Journey ever since December of 2007, when Arnel Pineda became the official lead singer for Journey.
So help me with then the big explosion once he joined the band. Was that because so many people I don't know, got wind of this story and thought it was really cool? Was it because he was from the Pacific Rim, if you will, and you had all of that built-in audience now? What helped Journey with this? I mean, it was it's like a supersonic rise they took again.
That's absolutely right. I mean, the first part that you mentioned is it is an incredibly compelling story. It attracted the likes of Oprah Winfrey, among other people, and they got a spot on Oprah's show. It must have been the second to the last or the last season at that point. She was wrapping up her career there, and he went on and he talked about, and when we talk about Steve Perry's rags to riches story, and Steve Perry was literally a starving artist in the 1970s before he joined Journey. Arnel Pineda was a homeless street kid growing up in the back streets of Manila in the Philippines, an orphan, and drinking and bathing in a water fountain in Luneta Park. You've got the shot right up there on the screen there of their Oprah Winfrey show. I mean, it's hard to watch that without breaking down in tears. And that moment really reintroduced Journey, I think. The combination of them and Arnel and being on Oprah reintroduced Journey to the American audience. It was another factor was that the millennials were reaching an age, and the millennials are a huge generation. They're bigger than the baby boomers, and when they decide they like music, that music is liked and that music is big. And so the millennials at that point decided they liked Journey, perhaps to a great extent because of Arnel. The immigrant community here in the United States has found a way to like Journey because of Arnel, because he is an immigrant and he is a person of color. To see him fronting this band that in the early 2000s was basically known for rocking the red states, and it's a different, very different dynamic. And then there's the entire Pacific market, as you mentioned. Being able to go back across, and not when I say the Pacific Rim, I don't just mean East Asia. I mean, their first major concert with Arnel was down in Chile.
Wow.
And so it's the entire, there's just all sorts of markets that have reopened to them as a result of that move.
It's a remarkable story. And having seen Journey, I thought I want to say they might have been paired on the bill with, I don't know if this is right, Foreigner opening for them, but what's left of Foreigner type thing. I think there's one. Lou Gramm left it long ago. He's a brilliant, front man, of course, and
Yes.
rock vocalist. But anyway, more to the point, I think Journey was at the Hollywood Bowl. I don't know who opened for them, but it's not important. In any case, I oftentimes get caught in these details that are totally meaningless. But just in the scene I'm trying to remember exactly. He spoke beautifully and frankly and openly about his rise into the band Journey. I mean, he talks about the fact that I was a kid with nothing, living in the streets, and you can't help but be moved by that. Now, I mean, he's speaking to the Hollywood Bowl. I mean, it's this immense place that's packed to the gills with fans,
Yes.
and yet you just can only love them more as a result of this story.
Yes. I can't say it any better than that.
So now to the Journey arc. They continue to do what? Are they recording new music?
Well, as I talk about in my book, Livin, Just to Find Emotion, Journey and the Story of American Rock, yes, indeed. They released an album in the summer of 22, which was recorded during the pandemic from various locations. I don't want to necessarily say via Zoom, but it was all via remote. They all did their parts in different home studios. They wrote together on the telephone and via Zoom and put together this album. It's a decent album. It's a good album. It's not quite up to the level of their hits. It is their first album in 10 years. They've now done 3 albums with Arnel. The first one, Revelation, came out in 2008, and that went platinum. That sold 1 million copies. And then in 2011, they released Eclipse, and now in 2022, Freedom.
Yeah, this book is in celebration of Journey's 50th anniversary. Wow. Let me just double back for a quick second in my last minute or two with you and
Sure.
ask you about clashes in the band. I mean, we talked a lot about how they were looking to replace Steve Perry, et cetera. You know, when the time came, he left the band, et cetera. But there were other strong personalities, you mentioned Neil Schon, et cetera, who were big creative forces in the band Journey. Were there clashes, and did they was it creative clashes, or were it personality clashes, or both, or?
So the creative clashes that largely took place in the mid-1980s, when Steve Perry kind of returned from his solo career and moved the band in a different direction than it had been previously. A little bit less rock, a little bit more Motown, a little bit more soul, more ballads, fewer rockers, that sort of direction. And as a result, founding bass player Ross Valerie left the band, and longtime drummer Steve Smith was fired from the band at that time. But most of their clashes have actually not had to do with musical differences. They've had to do, frankly, with money and who gets the profits from all the T-shirts that we're buying and that sort of thing. And they've been suing each other on and off since 1980, if you could believe it, when drummer Ainsley Dunbar, I'm not going to say founding drummer because there was one person there for a couple of months in '73, but original drummer, let's call him, because he was there for the first few albums. Remarkable drummer, had been with David Bowie, had been with Frank Zappa, had been with Mayall and the Blues Breakers back in England, out of Liverpool, Ainsley Dunbar. And when he was fired in '78, they defrauded him of his shares in the band's corporation. And he sued.
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah. Well, the band's corporation is called Nightmare Productions, so that may give you some sense of what it is to deal with them. But right on up till they just settled a lawsuit with between, I believe, Jonathan Cain and Neil Schon were suing each other. I think they settled that last December 2023.
Wow.
The big one, of course, was in 2020. Two longtime members who are actually members from the classic era of the band were fired contradictory to the law, or against the contract, I guess you could say. So they countersued, and it was a long, drawn-out process. Yeah.
And you realize all of these guitarists and vocalists that were part of things. One of our listeners asking about, is it Greg Rowley from Santana's band who came over? Because Neil Schon was part of Santana's band also, right?
That's right. Neil Schon joined Santana with what is called Santana 3, although technically it was called Santana again, but we often refer to it as the third album, or Santana 3. Greg Rowley was one of the founders of Santana when it was called the Santana Blues Band, and he was the fellow who sang Black Magic Woman, and he sang Everybody's Everything up on that stage at Woodstock. Yeah, Greg Rowley was with Journey from the moment of their origin right on up until December of 1980, that sad month that I think we all remember, where we lost that great Beatle, John Lennon. But Greg Rowley left Journey that month, exhausted from touring, exhausted from the road, and he newly married and ready to go be a parent for the first time. And but it worked out incredibly well for Journey because they replaced Greg with Jonathan Cain, who very quickly became the band's chief songwriter, responsible for such great hits as Don't Stop Believin', Who's Crying Now, Open Arms, Faithfully, Separate Ways, Be Good to Yourself, When You Love a Woman. We could just go on and on and on.
You are amazing. I could talk to you forever, David Hamilton Golland, and your book is, again, just a check. Can you throw it up there again, Tony? Livin, Just to Find Emotion, Journey and the Story of American Rock. I mean, you're such a great historian of this very complicated and intriguing and powerful thing, which is music. And I'm so honored that we had a chance to talk to you, and I really wish you all the best with the book. Come back anytime. Livin' Just to Find Emotion. We'll have a link. Do you have where's it being? It's being sold everywhere, or I mean, we can have a link to Amazon, wherever you want.
Well, I think the Roman and Littlefield website might be a good link for you all to put up there.
JourneyHistoryBook.com. Will that
JourneyHistoryBook.com works. That's
Tony, can you put that in? JourneyHistoryBook.com. We'll put it into this description, and people can just go there for more. JourneyHistoryBook.com.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, so good. Hey, David Hamilton Golland, good luck with the book, and what a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Mark. You have a great day.
You too. So long. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.